So if you are unfortunate enough to remember the Saints Row reboot, I'm sure it doesn't need any introduction, but for those of you who have been successful in wiping it from your memory, this was just a train wreck from start to finish. The announcement trailer was shredded for being just totally like out of touch with the brand. As you can see, this comment from 3 years ago, they decided to absolutely shiz on their entire fan base and go out trying to find a new one. The main characters look more like IGN workers than actual gangsters. Okay, that's pretty funny. These main characters are looking like NPCs we run over in the good Saints Row games. Haters gonna hate, Twitter representative of a once great company. And basically it's because like the entire game was built around this reboot of Saints Row, which is historically very irreverent, irreverent really is the key word, but they were just like pure chaos, outrageous, unapologetic in that pursuit. And as a result, they were really like goofy, stupid fun. They were just a good time. And then they did this. You have shirtless 20-somethings riding motorcycles with kitty cat helmets. You have stereotypically like buff enemies, whatever, that's fine. But like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Already, I'm like, what? I don't connect with any of these characters. This guy's wearing a tuxedo. Why? What are we doing? It's like a tuxedo, but the sleeves are rolled up, which shows that he cares how he looks, but he's informal. What? People don't dress like this, okay? They don't. But this came out at the same period and era as Forspoken. And one of the things that was interesting about Forspoken was developers having their impressions leaked, where basically they said, we were shocked people didn't like the writing in Forspoken. And this was also true. The developers of Saints Row Reboot were stunned that people teased them so incessantly over the character designs and the dialogue and stuff. They were genuinely shocked because they thought that this was super relatable, that this cast was going to be beloved and relatable. And they just were genuinely stunned that people started teasing it like crazy. And I debated this for a long time, but like a year or two ago, I had a realization, and it was like, what would have to happen for a developer to think that these characters are relatable? How does that happen? Because I don't know anybody who relates to these characters. And then it hit me. Oh, it's because the developers are these people. They are them. They just put themselves into the game because they think that everybody is like them. So they were shocked when like normal, average, everyday people didn't find it relatable and found it incredibly grating and very annoying. And they were insulted by it because it was like, yeah, everybody is annoyed by these people. Everybody hates these people. These are obnoxious. And I mean, the dialogue that's just unforgivable was the thing where they were rambling about student loans, because it was such a clear, like, we're relatable. Try not to cringe challenge. Difficulty impossible. Are you ready for this? Buckle up. You guys put a 1 in chat when you cringe, okay? Try to hold out as long as you can, okay? Buckle up. Buckle up. Here we go.
Oh, everything smells amazing, Kev.
Already, dude. Why is he shirtless and why does he have headphones on? I don't... And then, like, he has a waffle tattoo. I just noticed that. It's like a breakfast tattoo with syrup and strawberries and then waffle and then the milk carton and then the waffle on his chest. Like, already, dude, I'm going out. I'm losing it. Sorry. Already done. Okay, reset. Everyone reset. Everyone reset. Hold on. I got to put chat on screen. I need people in the YouTube clip to see how much we're struggling, but we're going to really try. Okay. Really try. Reset. Everybody. Deep breaths. Deep breaths.
You know what would make it smell even better?
Hey man, if you want a $300 waffle maker, you can buy with the exposure the idols pay you in. Don't expect us to chip in.
I've told you before,
Fair.
the idols are trying to build a post-capitalist society.
Oh my God. Oh, okay. Okay. Post-capitalist. Yeah, oh God. I don't think I've ever heard in the last 20 years the word capitalist put into dialogue in a video game and it not be totally cringe as hell. I just... Okay. Okay. Let's Let's keep going. We're going to try to we have to get to the student loan part.
Society where money is not a concept.
Yeah? Then why don't you go run off and join the commune?
Thank
I need
you.
to showering. Are you gonna help me get the waffle maker or not?
As an investor, I don't like wasting money.
You're wearing a fucking bow tie.
Okay, I will throw in $20 for a waffle maker.
Nina?
Good for 10?
Who helped you move your forged paintings last month?
Fine, 15.
What sort of waffle maker can I get for $35?
Presumably one that makes fucking waffles.
Hey, the wage slave is back.
How was your first day? Were the other mercenaries nice to you?
You know, as far as hired killers go, I'd give him a 7.
You look like you could use a mimosa.
Stay
Thanks, Eli.
strong. Stay strong.
Seriously, how's the job?
Stay
It's
strong.
murder business. The fundamentals don't change, just the uniform.
I can tell you love it.
Okay. I don't have to love it. I have to pay my student loans.
Amen.
So I'm guessing it means it pays good.
It's supposed to be. Got stiffed on my bone.
Oh, brr. Man, they thought this was good, guys. Again, how disconnected from from reality do you have to be like, they're gonna love this? Oh, yeah, you got to be from the planet Blockhead, population U. I don't even know how you could possibly come off looking at this scene and be like, wow, yeah, no, this is great. But this is the thing to remember. Hundreds of people worked on this. And no doubt dozens of people watched this scene and went, yeah, no, lock it in. Lock it in. It's crazy. It's crazy. But it shows you just like how there are no dissenting opinions in that studio. Nobody stood up and went, no, we're going to get destroyed. This is a terrible idea. Terrible idea. And I've told you guys, this is not news. You know, I've told you guys over the last like few years, I've done occasional consulting work on games, many games that have not seen the light of day, some that ended up being canceled and will never be seen. Where basically they came in and they're like, hey, can you just look at this? We'll give a little presentation. You offer your thoughts so we kind of know what to expect from public reception. And I offer my thoughts. And some of the stuff I've seen, to be fair, I think is amazing. So there are some things I've done consultancy on that I think will be awesome. And I really hope they release. Other things where I'm like, this is a bad idea. And you have to tell them that. And you have to be like, this thing you've been working on for years? No. Like, just buckle up, baby. Buckle up. It's going to be a lot. So, but like even that, I was able to communicate that and tell them that. And some of those studios, it looks like they also got the same feedback from other places. So they cut their losses and they canned it and moved on. I don't think they ever got anybody in the studio or to look at any of this that didn't just say, you guys are doing great. This is great. I don't think anybody ever provided that feedback. Otherwise, this would never have happened. I mean, this was so easily avoidable. You show the character designs, the concept art, which is one of the first things they do when they're coming up with ideas for like what the game is going to be. Before they've even designed the models of the characters, they should have shown that concept art to some outside faces. And I think those people would have been like, no, but I don't think this is Saints Row. I think this is like, it almost seems to have contempt for fans of Saints Row. Like the idea that Saints Row is going to come off and try to be like kind of PC and like eat the rich and not just like totally irreverent is so insane. It's like they hate their own players, which is really what Saints Row felt like. It was just a disaster. I mean, the whole game was just a disaster. But they've pretty much gone silent. Sadly, the developer Volition, which had a long and storied history, company. They were OGs, man. These guys were around forever. Just earlier in the stream, we were talking about Red Faction, and these are the guys that made Red Faction way back in the day, like 2000. Like Red Faction, I believe, was like the first game to normalize the controller layout It was either the controller layout for FPS games or it was the mouse and keyboard layout. They revolutionized one of those. And it was super, super crazy cool and has destructible environments, even though it was made in 2000. It was super cool. But these are the guys that did that. They had that background and history. If you played older games, you know this logo. This logo's ingrained in your soul. And of course, they also made Saints Row. And Saints Row was like deeply beloved. It never did like amazingly well. They were never like the most successful games, but they had cult followings and people loved them, you know? People held them in high regard, and it was sad to see that nothing ever came of it. But then they announced this reboot, and it just is the total opposite. It's laughably cringy and a disaster. And it was one of those games that was built for a quote unquote modern audience, which is pretty clearly a myth, because all these games have been made for the modern audience and the modern audience never shows up. And I think it's because they're not real. Gamers, like the actual customers that would have bought this, they were not connecting to it and they did not like it. They were not talking about it. They were not into it. You know, they shut it down, teased it, and blew it up because it was terrible. But they made this game for somebody else. So all of the like original fans who liked their old school games, they were left behind and dismissed. And a lot of the dialogue and presentation of this game almost comes off as if, again, they have disdain and contempt for those gamers and those previous fans. And it was all sacrificed at the altar of the modern audience that never came, because I don't think they're out there. I don't think it's real. I've never met somebody who was like, yeah, I finally decided to play Saints Row Reboot and I loved it because I felt so related to the characters. No one has ever said that. But just now, the CEO of Saber Interactive, of all places, has come out and started talking about 2022's poorly received Saints Row Reboot. It is crazy to think it's been like 3 years. As part of an interview with GameFile, which is paywalled, so they've got little snippets of it here, Saber's Matt Karch spoke about studio closures and layoffs in general. Volition, as you may recall, was shuttered in 2023 as part of then parent company Embracer Group's previously announced restructuring program. Reflecting on this, Karch, who worked under the Embracer umbrella for a period of time before the sale of Saber assets, stated, while, quote, it would be nice in an ideal world for everyone to have a job, the Saints Row team, quote, were so expensive for what they were, and therefore are gone. This is one thing that's really hard to talk about and mention without sounding like a total a-hole, okay? It's really hard to talk about this because layoffs suck. Everybody agrees to lose your job is dreadful and miserable, but there are realities of the games industry. And at some point, as you can see, it would be ideal for everybody to have a job, but the Saints Row team, quote, were so expensive for what they were. Results matter in a business context, certainly. And I think for the Saints Row reboot, it was a great example of a team that was entrusted with a lot of money and totally blew it. And you look at some of the other studios recently that have had layoffs or closures, like Monolith, for example. Monolith is a team that was crazy successful with, like, you know, their old school games, whether you look at Fear or, of course, the Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War games. Those games did very well, were critically acclaimed, made a lot of money, but they didn't do anything for like 7 to 8 years. They had restarted multiple projects. A lot of the core talent had left to go form other new studios. And so what was left was a team that was largely inexperienced and never shipped a game before. And they were telling executives that they needed to restart again the Wonder Woman game. And they were caught in the same spot where it was like, well, they were really expensive for what they were, which in the case of the Saints Row team, they were a really, really expensive team that made a colossal $200 million flop and also destroyed the reputation of a previously beloved IP, which is something that you also got to remember. This wasn't just an instance of like, oh, our game flopped. No, they took an IP that was previously valued, because these IP are valued on the books. Like it's a non-tangible asset, basically. It's something that's worth a certain amount of money. That's why investors have said Ubisoft, if run properly, just Assassin's Creed and Rainbow Six should be worth together somewhere between $7 and $10 billion Just the IP, the ability to make games in those franchises should be worth that amount. And the Saints Row reboot certainly was not a multi-billion-dollar IP, but if it was worth 100 million or 500 million, whatever the IP was worth, it's definitely worth a lot less now. And that's not something that really gets brought up when you talk about like the studio lost money or the game wasn't successful. The brand damage has a big role to play in this, because it's kind of undeniable, you know, that was a huge component of this too. He goes on though, quote, "They didn't know what they were building. They didn't have any real direction. It couldn't last. And so who's going to fund the next game after that disaster?" This is the other thing. When you're talking about the industry that's gotten more and more difficult it's become more and more difficult in the industry to justify big budget games. It just is. It's really difficult. And when you are going to an executive or to a panel of investors or something, angel investors, and you're pitching your product, how do you get them to give you money if your last thing was a colossal disaster? It's really difficult and really, frankly, rare to pull that off. It's why it was so remarkable that BioWare had been given another chance with Dragon Age: The Veilguard, because they had Andromeda, Anthem, and now they've had Veilguard, 3 games that were considered flops by EA, considered massive losses for EA, and now they're going to get greenlit to do another massive project in Mass Effect. Like that's crazy. That's very, very, very rare. You typically don't see that. He continues, "The days of throwing money at games other than maybe the GTAs of the world are over. It's over. The business needs to mature, and if it doesn't, it's in trouble." This is a big piece of it. It used to be that if you made like a big budget game, you would get big budget dollars. You'd see a return on that investment roughly proportional to the money you put in, because there wasn't a lot of competition in the industry. Gamers weren't as picky. So you could put out a 7 out of 10 game or even a 6.5 and still probably do fine. Now, no. In the age of like streamers, TikTokers, YouTubers, it's just not really a thing you can get away with, especially because like, you know, peer pressure is a big piece of it. And nobody wants to be the one guy who's playing the cringy game everybody hates. It's just something people don't like. So you get this kind of herd mentality where everybody moves towards games together or away from games together. And then he continues, "Unfortunately, that means layoffs. If I were running a team in California, my goal would be, okay, who are the absolute must-haves in this group? And they exist. We have American talent at Saber, and who could do this for, you know, a quarter of the price in Poland?" Because this is also a fact of the matter. People are like, how on earth did Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 only cost like $42 million? Because it's way cheaper to have employees in, what's the name of the place that Warhorse is based? My brain is blanking. No, not Poland. Prague. The beautiful land of Prague. Yeah, it's just, it's a reality of the situation when you're talking about a team. And in the case of Volition, where were they based? Volition, they were based in Champaign, Illinois, 10th most populous city in Illinois. That's a smaller area though. It's a much smaller place. September 1st, 2023. This is still their website. Look how sad that is. They made all of these games, and this one basically single-handedly canned it. It's crazy. That's what happens. That's how quickly it can fall apart, man. Granted, they had been on kind of a rough ride for a little while, but still. Yeah, it just is what it is. They said 2022's Volition developed Saints Row reboot was met with disappointing critical and commercial reception. Following its release, Embracer admitted the game, quote, did not meet the full expectations and left the fan base partially polarized. This is very generous. Left the fan base partially polarized. How are you partially polarized? Either it's polarized or it's not. Do you mean only like a minority of people hated on it? I don't know if that's the case. I think a majority of people really didn't connect with it. I mean, this was one of those games where you didn't have to do anything. There was no like, there's been instances of like contrived hate in the industry where it feels like we're trying real hard to hate on this. It's like that one story we looked at where the guy on X shared a screenshot of an article about Fable that mentioned cross-dressing and was like, wow, the new Fable, it's going woke. This is going to be trash. And I'm saying this as a fan of the old games. Turns out it was a screenshot of an article from 2012 discussing the first game, and he didn't read the article. He was sent a screenshot of the article, took it hook, line, and sinker, and then shared it to everybody. Claimed he was a fan of the original games, despite not realizing that that was a thing in the first game. So, like, clearly just didn't know what he was talking about, but put it out there to try and, like, justify him hating on the new Fable. That's something where, like, yeah, clearly we're arguing in bad faith. We're having to contrive these things to make our points. In the case of the Saints Row reboot, though, all I had to do was play a clip of the game, and everybody is cringing their asses off. We didn't have to edit this. We didn't have to snip it out of context. I just played the entire cutscene from start to finish, and you immediately are like, oh God, turn it off. You know? You don't need anything more than that, because it speaks for itself, you know, and Hans Niemann, the chess speaks for itself. In this case, the cringe speaks for itself. You know, and that's why, like, there's some instances where certainly I feel like there's a lot of bad faith argumentation. You guys are going one in the chat again. Okay, that was funny. There's definitely a lot of instances where people argue in bad faith with certain games. They just decided they want to hate it and they find a way to get there. But in this case, we really didn't have to try at all. You just watch the game and it speaks for itself, you know? It's really, really bad. Turn off even without sound. I can't look at it. Yeah, dude. Again, just like the shirtless thing. And you can tell they're like, how quirky is it? He has a waffle tattoo. What a quirky guy. Everyone loves quirky. I'm like, no. There was a little bit of foreshadowing in here for Dragon Age Veilguard. You want to hear it?
Off the set of an 80s action movie. I was half expecting her to call me Rook and threaten to take my badge.
Call me Rook. Another future cringy game that would have a character named Rook. It all ties together, man. It all ties together. So unfortunately, I'm not that surprised that this is how the Saints Row reboot story ended. I don't think it's surprising to anybody, but it was just a story of mismanagement of a game that frankly never should have been made. They should have made this character art design, shared it with people, and immediately been like, no. Because character designs reflect the tone, they reflect the art direction, they reflect all of that. And I think you can tell a lot from, or a lot about the game and the developers from those character designs. And that was a big problem people had with like Concord. It was a big problem people had with Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, Saints Row reboot. A lot of these big colossal flops, you can look at the character designs and be like, okay, yeah, I can already tell what this is going to be. And it's funny that it can be whittled down to something as simple as that, but it's such a clear like indication of where the game is going to end up once you see those character designs. And I think I don't know if it's this desire to appeal to this imaginary group of people or what, but again, I think it's just that there's a group of people fresh out of art school that are making some of these games, and they dress like this, they act like this, they talk like this. And no one else in the actual like gaming customer base finds that relatable. They find it really cringy and distasteful and annoying. But in order to make a game that appeals to the actual customers, you have to know what gamers want and are looking for. And you can't have contempt for them. That's the biggest piece of it. Because, you know, with like Concord, we saw developers calling gamers talentless freaks for bashing the character designs in Concord and stuff like that. And it's like this, that reveals like the real contempt you have. And I'm sure that they dealt on their X profile with some people that were being horribly mean, and they probably encountered some talentless freaks, but you should be mature enough to realize that you cannot say that broadly about the people that don't like my game are just talentless freaks. You can't say that. They give theater kid vibes, but worse. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I kind of know what you mean. He took my thing.